The thing, everyone can see it. It is 7:42 on a Saturday afternoon, and you are pulling into a parking lot filled with expensive cars. A black luxury SUV rolls past you. Then a new sports sedan. Then a pickup with oversized wheels and a payment that probably costs more than your first apartment. You pull into a space near the entrance in your 7-year-old car. It has scratches along the passenger door. The wheels aren't impressive. The paint has started fading near the hood. Nobody turns to look. You get out and straighten your shirt. A coworker standing near the restaurant notices your car. He smiles. Still driving that thing? You laugh. Yeah, it works. He looks at the car for another second, then walks toward his friends. The conversation is over, but for a moment, you remember how differently that comment would have felt 5 years ago. Back then, you would have wondered what everyone thought. You would have compared your car to theirs. You would have calculated whether you could afford a newer one. You might have gone home that night and opened a dealership website. Now you don't, because there's something nobody in this parking lot can see. Your investment accounts, your emergency savings, the money you've been quietly putting away for years, the financial flexibility you've built without announcing any of it. The person standing beside the most ordinary car in the parking lot may have more financial security than the people driving the most expensive ones. And that's the strange part. You could afford a nicer car, you've run the numbers, more than once. You could make the payment, you could handle the insurance, you could walk into the dealership tomorrow and drive something that would make people notice. But you don't want it. Not because you're pretending to be frugal, not because you hate nice things, and not because you can't afford them. You simply stopped needing your possessions to explain who you are. 3 years earlier, you would not have understood that. You were still trying to look successful. You were still measuring your progress by what other people could see. And that's where this began. When looking successful started mattering, you were in your early 20s when you first noticed that people treated expensive things differently. It wasn't something anyone explained to you. You simply noticed it. A newer phone seemed to get more attention. Better clothes made someone look more put together. A newer car made a person seem more successful before they had even said hello. Then there were the apartments. Someone moved into a nicer building, posted a picture of the view, and suddenly everyone talked about how well they were doing. You noticed restaurants worked the same way? Certain places weren't just places to eat. They were places to be seen. At first you told yourself you wanted those things because they were better. Maybe the phone had a better camera. Maybe the apartment had more space. Maybe the car was more reliable. Those explanations weren't completely false, but underneath them was something you didn't want to admit. You liked what those things communicated. Success. You wanted people to look at your life and assume you were moving forward. So when someone you knew bought a better car, you started questioning yours. When a friend moved into a nicer apartment, your own place suddenly felt smaller. When someone showed up wearing something expensive, you became more aware of what you were wearing. Nothing had actually changed about your life. Only your comparison had changed. And comparison has a strange way of turning perfectly acceptable things into evidence that you're falling behind. You started thinking about upgrades, not because your old things stopped working, because they stopped making you feel like you were progressing. That was the trap. You weren't always buying things because you needed them. Sometimes you were buying what you believed they said about you. A nicer car said you were successful. A better apartment said you were moving up. An expensive dinner said you were doing well. And every time your income increased, the pressure became stronger. You thought you were improving your lifestyle. But slowly, you were also building a lifestyle that required you to keep earning more just to maintain the image. You didn't understand the cost yet. You were still learning what success was supposed to look like. The first time you choose differently, your income increases. Not enough to make you rich, but enough to change the way you think about money. For the first time, you can comfortably afford a significant lifestyle upgrade. You start looking at newer cars, then you look at the monthly payments. They don't seem outrageous. That's what makes the decision difficult. The number fits inside your budget. You could make the payment without missing your bills. You could put down the deposit, sign the paperwork, and drive home in something that would immediately change how people saw you. You sit in the driver's seat of one of them after work. The interior smells new. The seats are comfortable. The screen is enormous. For a few minutes, you imagine pulling into work the next morning. You imagine your coworkers noticing. You imagine how different it would feel to finally have something that looks like your income. Then you open the calculator on your phone. Instead of asking whether you can afford the payment, you ask a different question. What happens if I invest this amount every month instead? You enter the number, then the number of years, then a reasonable long-term return assumption. You stare at the result. The car gives you something immediately: comfort, status, excitement. The investment gives you something you can't see yet: time, growth, options. You sit there for another minute. There is no obvious wrong answer. You could buy the car, you could afford it. Nobody would call you irresponsible. But you realize you aren't actually choosing between a car and an investment. You're choosing between two versions of your future. One version gets the reward now. The other gets a possibility later. You close the calculator. You don't buy the car. Instead, you set up an automatic investment for roughly the amount that would have become the payment. The next month, the money leaves your account. Nothing changes. Nobody notices. Your coworkers don't congratulate you. Your friends don't ask what you bought. Your car still looks exactly the same. But for the first time, you experience something you couldn't see from the outside. Progress that doesn't need an audience. The money leaves before you see it. You create an automatic investment system. Every payday, the money moves before you have a chance to spend it. At first, it's $300. You barely notice the difference. Your checking account still looks normal. Your bills are still paid. You can still go out for dinner. You can still buy the things you actually need, but something has changed. The money you once waited to have left over is now being moved first. A few months later, your income increases slightly. You raise the contribution to $400. Then later, another raise comes. You increase it again. You don't celebrate these changes. Nobody else knows they're happening. Your apartment still looks the same. Your car still looks the same. Your clothes still look the same from the outside. Almost nothing about your life appears different. But inside the investment account, something is quietly changing. The balance begins moving. Slowly at first, you contribute. The market moves. Some months the number goes up. Other months, it goes down. You stop expecting every month to look impressive. That's important, because if you needed to see immediate results, you would have stopped long before the process had enough time to matter. Instead, you keep going. The automatic transfer becomes so normal that you eventually forget about it. You don't need motivation on payday. You don't need to make a fresh decision every month. The system makes the decision for you. And that's when you begin understanding something about wealth that you didn't understand when you were trying to look successful. The most important financial progress can be completely invisible. Nobody sees an automatic investment. Nobody compliments you for increasing a contribution. Nobody takes a picture when you decide not to upgrade your car. There's no applause, but there's something else. The account keeps growing. And slowly, your definition of progress begins to change. You stop asking, does my life look more expensive this year? And start asking, is my financial position stronger than it was last year? That becomes the new measurement. You don't need to look richer every year. You need to become financially stronger every year. Everyone else upgrades. Your coworkers begin upgrading. One arrives Monday morning in a luxury SUV. Another shows up 2 weeks later in a new sports sedan. Someone else starts posting pictures from expensive vacations, rooftop restaurants, and hotels with views that look nothing like your apartment. Nobody is doing anything wrong. They work hard. They earn their money. They enjoy their purchases. And honestly, some of the things they buy look incredible. For a moment, you feel the familiar pressure. Your car suddenly looks older. Your apartment suddenly feels smaller. Your clothes suddenly seem less impressive. You start thinking about your own income. It's higher than it was a few years ago. So why shouldn't your lifestyle look higher too? Then you notice something you hadn't paid attention to before. Every upgrade creates another permanent expense. The luxury SUV isn't just the price on the window, it's the payment. Higher insurance, more expensive maintenance, better tires, more fuel. The nicer apartment isn't just higher rent, it's larger utility bills, more furniture, more space to fill. The expensive vacation isn't just the flight, it's the hotel, restaurants, transportation, and everything else that becomes normal once you've experienced it. None of these expenses looks dangerous by itself. That's what makes lifestyle inflation so difficult to recognize. It doesn't usually arrive as one reckless decision. It arrives as a series of reasonable upgrades. You get a raise, your spending rises, you get another raise, your spending rises again. Eventually, the extra income that could have increased your wealth has already been assigned to a more expensive version of your life. Meanwhile, your income keeps increasing, and so do your investments, but your fixed lifestyle barely changes. The gap between what you earn and what you permanently need to spend becomes wider. You begin to realize that this gap is where your financial freedom is being built. The people around you can see their upgrades. They can see your old car. They can't see the widening space between your income and your expenses. And for the first time, you don't feel like you're missing out. You feel like you're quietly building something they can't see. The moment you almost give in. You've been disciplined for years. Then one Saturday afternoon, you see it. A car you've wanted for a long time. Not just a practical upgrade, something beautiful. Something that makes you slow down when you pass it on the road. You walk into the dealership almost casually, telling yourself you're only looking. Then you sit inside. The seats are comfortable. The dashboard is perfect. The technology is better than anything you've owned. You start imagining it parked outside your apartment for once. You aren't thinking about what other people will think. You genuinely want it. That's what makes this decision different. You aren't buying it to impress your coworkers. You aren't trying to prove you're successful. You simply like the car. The salesperson gives you the the numbers. You put the figures into your calculator. The payment fits, the insurance fits. Your income can handle it. You could sign the paperwork today and never miss a payment. For a few minutes, you tell yourself that maybe you've been too strict. You've spent years saving. You've invested consistently. You've avoided lifestyle inflation. Maybe you're finally allowed to enjoy some of it. Then you open your investment calculator. You enter the same monthly payment. You extend the timeline, 10 years. The number on the screen gets your attention. The car gives you something immediately comfort, convenience, enjoyment. The investment gives you something less exciting, but potentially far more valuable, future options. You stare at both numbers. Neither choice is automatically wrong. That's important. You could buy the car and still be financially responsible, but suddenly the question isn't, can I afford it? You've already answered that. The real question is, do I want this more than I want what this money could become? You sit there for another minute. Then you close the calculator. You don't tell yourself you'll never own the car. You simply decide you don't need to buy it today. You walk out. The strange part is that you don't feel deprived. You feel in control. And that may be the biggest difference between discipline and deprivation. Deprivation says, I can't have this. Discipline says, I could have this. I just choose something else right now. First, financial emergency. Then something happens that you didn't plan for. It's a Tuesday evening when you notice water pooling underneath the washing machine. At first, you assume it's a loose hose. You pull the machine away from the wall. The hose is fine. You call a repair company. The technician arrives the next morning, checks the machine, and gives you the answer. The motor is failing. The repair isn't worth the cost. A replacement will be $1,480. You stare at the estimate. A few years ago, this number would have changed your entire month. You would have put it on a credit card. Maybe you would have carried the balance for months. You might have delayed another bill to make room for it. Instead, you open your savings account. You have an emergency fund. Not an enormous one. Not enough to make unexpected expenses feel pleasant, but enough you transfer the money. The balance drops immediately, and strangely, you don't feel panic. You feel annoyed. That's all. Annoyed that the washing machine broke? Annoyed that you have to spend money replacing something you didn't plan to replace? But you're not wondering how you're going to survive the month. You're not calculating interest. You're not borrowing from tomorrow's paycheck. You pay for the replacement. 2 days later, the new machine is running. Life goes back to normal. You look at your savings account again. The balance is lower. For a moment, you feel like you've lost progress. Then, you remember what the emergency fund was actually built to do. It wasn't supposed to sit there forever so the number could look impressive. It was supposed to absorb moments exactly like this. You didn't fail because you used your savings. The system worked. And that changes the way you think about wealth. You used to think financial success meant having enough money to buy impressive things. Now you understand something different. Wealth can make ordinary problems smaller. A broken appliance is still frustrating. An unexpected bill is still inconvenient, but it doesn't have to become a financial crisis. That's what financial security really feels like. The problem is still there, but it no longer controls your life. Your income finally jumps, then your income changes. The email arrives on a Monday morning while you're sitting at your desk. Congratulations. Your promotion is approved. You read the new salary twice. It's a meaningful increase. Not enough to change your entire life overnight, but enough that you immediately start thinking about what you could finally afford. A nicer apartment, better furniture, more restaurants, maybe the car you've been watching online. For a few minutes, you let yourself imagine all of it. Then you remember what happened the last time your income increased. You didn't intentionally become a bigger spender. Your lifestyle simply expanded around the new number. This time, you decide to do something different. Before the first larger paycheck arrives, you divide the increase. Part of it goes toward your current life. You want to enjoy the promotion. You don't want every raise to become another exercise in denying yourself everything. Another portion increases your automatic investment. Another portion goes toward your cash reserves. You make the decisions before the money arrives. That matters. Because once the larger paycheck appears in your account, it feels like money you already own. And money you already own is surprisingly easy to spend. The first month feels strange. Your income is higher, your lifestyle is slightly better, but your financial progress accelerates too. You realize something you hadn't understood before? A raise doesn't automatically make you wealthier. What you do with the raise determines how much of it actually improves your financial position. You could have turned the entire increase into a larger apartment, a newer car, and more expensive weekends. Instead, you let your life improve without allowing your permanent expenses to rise at the same speed. That's the difference. You aren't trying to live like you're still broke. You're simply refusing to let every increase in income become another obligation. And now, every time your salary rises, the future gets a raise too. Because some of the money improves your life today, and some of it keeps working for the person you'll become years from now, your income finally jumps. But this time, your lifestyle doesn't jump with it. When your money starts working for years, you are the only one doing the work. Every payday, you contribute. Every month, you move money into your investments. The balance grows mostly because you keep putting more into it. Then one year, something changes. You open your investment investment account and notice that the growth is larger than expected, you check your own contributions. They are substantial. But the portfolio has increased by significantly more. You stare at the numbers for the first time, you can clearly see that your money is beginning to produce money of its own. It's not magic. It's not guaranteed. And you know, one good year doesn't mean every year will look the same, but the difference is real. You're no longer the only engine pushing your financial future forward. Then the market falls, not a little. Enough that the account balance drops noticeably. You check it once, then again. You feel the old temptation. Maybe you should stop contributing. Maybe you should wait until things look safer. Maybe you should move everything somewhere else until the market settles down. But you've learned enough by now to recognize the feeling. You don't need to make a decision simply because you're uncomfortable, so you keep going. Your automatic contribution happens, then another. The market stays unpredictable. Some weeks are encouraging, others aren't. You stop measuring your progress by whether the account is higher every morning. Instead, you measure whether you're still following the system. Months pass. Eventually, the market recovers. The account climbs again. Then it reaches a new high. You look at the balance and realize how different the numbers feel now. At the beginning, every dollar of progress required you to earn another dollar. Now, part of the progress comes from money that was already invested. That is the moment the idea of compounding becomes real. Not because the number suddenly makes you wealthy, but because you finally understand the mechanism. Your contributions built the foundation. Time gave the foundation room to grow. And consistency allowed both to keep working together. You spent years trying to make more money. Now, for the first time, your money is helping you make progress too. You're no longer the only person working for your financial future. Your money is working alongside you. The moment money becomes freedom. Then something changes at work. Your manager calls you into a meeting on a Tuesday afternoon. There is a new opportunity, more responsibility, a larger salary. But it also means relocating, a longer commute, more hours, and a schedule that would leave very little room for the life you've built outside of work. 5 years ago, you would have accepted immediately. You would have looked at the salary first. You would have calculated what the extra money could buy: a better apartment, a newer car, more expensive vacations. You probably wouldn't have asked yourself whether the additional income was worth the additional life it would consume. This time, you don't answer immediately. You go home, you sit at the kitchen table, you open your financial accounts, then you look at your monthly expenses, your emergency savings, your investments, your debt, everything you've spent years building. For the first time, you realize you have something you didn't have before. Room, not unlimited money, not enough to retire tomorrow, but enough room to think before saying yes. You could accept the promotion, you could negotiate, you could wait, you could look for another opportunity, you could even say no. And suddenly saying no doesn't feel reckless. It feels possible. You turn down the offer. Your manager is surprised. So are some of your coworkers. One person tells you they couldn't imagine refusing that kind of money. You understand why, at 24, you couldn't have imagined it either. But this isn't really about rejecting money. It's about understanding that money has another purpose besides buying things. It can buy time, it can create breathing room, it can give you the ability to make decisions without desperation standing beside you. You walk out of work that evening and realize something important. The investments weren't just building a larger number. The emergency fund wasn't just protecting you from broken appliances. The money you didn't spend trying to look successful was quietly purchasing something much more valuable: options. You finally understand what financial freedom can look like before complete financial independence. Sometimes it isn't quitting your job. Sometimes it's simply knowing that you don't have to say yes to everything. Wealth didn't buy you a better life to display. It bought you the freedom to choose your life. What they still don't know you are back in the parking lot? Your car is still ordinary. There are newer vehicles around you, some worth more than what you paid for your first apartment. A man walks past and glances at your car. For a second, you wonder what he assumes. Maybe he thinks you couldn't afford something better. Maybe he thinks you're behind. Maybe he doesn't think about you at all. And that's when you realize how much has changed. Years ago, you would have cared. You would have wanted the newer car. Not necessarily because you needed it, but because you wanted people to see that you were doing well. You wanted the apartment, the watch, the restaurant, the vacation, the things that made success visible. Now you understand that most of those things were communicating something to people who weren't actually part of your financial future. They could see the car, they couldn't see the investment account, they could see the nicer apartment, they couldn't see the emergency fund, they could see the expensive vacation. They couldn't see the financial flexibility that made the vacation possible without creating debt. They could see what you spent. They couldn't see what you kept, and slowly you stopped needing them to. That's the part nobody tells you about building real wealth. At some point, the desire to prove you're doing well starts disappearing. You don't stop liking nice things. You still notice beautiful cars. You still enjoy good restaurants. You still want to travel. You still understand why people buy expensive things. The difference is that you no longer need those things to validate your progress. If you buy something now, it's because you genuinely want it, not because someone else has it, not because you're afraid of looking behind, not because you need strangers to believe you've made it. You spent years thinking wealth would make your life life look different. Instead, it made your life feel different. You have more choices, more breathing room, more control over your time. And perhaps the greatest luxury of all is that you don't need anyone standing in that parking lot to know what you've built. They can see the ordinary car. They don't need to see anything else. The richest thing you built was a life you no longer needed to prove.